Monday, November 16th, 2020, Maneco 64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. Today we're going to look at the silver price. We're going to look at the bull market in the early 70s all the way up to 1980 and try to extrapolate where the silver price could go in the next 5 years or so. And I'll explain to you why 5 years, why I'm looking at the 2024, maybe 2025 time period for a major move in the silver price. Before I start, I like to say in the 70s, of course, most people remember really 1980 when silver got up to almost $50. And everyone says, well, the Hunt brothers cornered the silver market. That's why it went up. But I think it's much more nuanced than that. The Hunt brothers, their father, H.L. Hunt, was a billionaire in the 60s. He made a fortune in oil. And the Hunt brothers realized in 1971, when Nixon closed the gold window, that they're going to inflate even more because the inflation had been happening already in the 60s and it was going to accelerate in the 70s. So they actually started buying futures on the COMEX, silver futures, and taking a lot of delivery. They took delivery all throughout the 70s because they knew what the policy of taking the dollar off gold would do to the dollar, to the inflation. And they were right. And I recommend an article. It's called Hunt Brothers Demanded Physical Delivery 2. It was written in January of 2010. I'm going to put a link to it below in the description. So you can have an idea that it wasn't just them trying to corner the market in 1980 that drove the price higher. It was much more than that. Yes, the Hunt brothers did eventually lose out. They lost out against the Federal Reserve and the government because the Federal Reserve couldn't have their scheme collapse. But it forced Paul Volcker to allow interest rates to go to 20%. So the period of prosperity, so to speak, especially for the 1% that we've had since 1980, they've got the Hunt brothers probably to thank for. So who's going to be the Hunt brothers of the current period? Well, I think it's all of us by demanding physical delivery, by buying physical, by trying to avoid the banker's game, which is COMEX. The Hunt brothers, they played the banker's game, and they're trying at the same time to bring the bankers down, so to speak. You will see. It's really interesting, this article. I highly recommend you read it. I've spoken about that before many years ago. It's always good to update. So now to the silver price. This is not new. I've done this calculation before. There's two kinds of scenarios, really, I would say. So here's the logarithmic chart. So it's based on percentage moves, not on nominal price moves. It gives you a better idea of what silver has done basically for the last 50 years. And you probably find it interesting that I say the first wave of inflation. Well, the inflation actually started in the 60s with the wars in the 60s, Vietnam War specifically, with the Great Society program of Lyndon Johnson, so the guns and butter. But the money or the inflation, because that's what it is, extra money and credit created out of thin air, only flowed into silver in a big way later on towards the end of the 70s. I guess that's the Cantillon effect as well. That inflation and the money flows to different places, but eventually it flows to specie or precious metals. And silver, of course, is the ultimate money of the people, I would say. Gold, of course, I'm not saying gold isn't, but if you look at every country and I've been collecting these silver coins, it was around the mid 60s to the early 70s when a lot of countries had to give up on silver coinage because it was becoming too expensive to mint the silver with the same face value. But it took another 10 years or so for that inflation to actually show in the silver price. So here I've got the low in 1971, November of 1971. Silver bottomed at 128.80, and then it made a move to a high of 670 in 1974. That was a 420% move. And then it corrected by 43% to 381 in January of 1976. And then from then on, it was off to the races. Well, not right away. It took a couple of years for silver to go through that 1974 high. But once it took that high, look how quickly it went up. A lot of people will say it was the Hunt brothers. I think it's more than just the Hunt brothers, even though they were a big part of it. So silver went up to a high of 48 in January of 1980. And that was a 1,159% move from the 381 low, number 3 there. So now I've got the second wave. What's the second wave, you might ask? Well, I think it's been a inflation that's even bigger than in the 60s and 70s, the inflation of the 80s, 90s, and the 21st century. We've had 40 years of massive inflation. And I don't mean rising prices. I mean the excess creation of money and credit by the central banks, by governments, through deficit spending, through the debt increasing. And I would say it's dwarfed what happened in the 60s and 70s. And despite that, of course, they have been able to keep control of the silver price. But if you think of cycles, really, I think the silver price is doing exactly what it's supposed to do. And the Cantillon effect is going to kick in my opinion, very soon. So let's have a look where silver could go then in 2025 or thereabouts. So I took the low in November of 2001. And I have to say, silver did bottom in 1991, but I'm going to take the low in 2001 because that's when the bull market in gold started roughly as well. So in 2001, silver bottomed at $4.04, and then it made a huge move, of course, and it took about 10 years to just below 70 at 49.72. That was a 1,130% gain. That first move there was much bigger than the first move in the early 70s, and I think that's because the inflation has been so much bigger since the 80s than it was in the 60s. And then we've had a correction from 2 to 3. And you notice that I didn't take the low this year because I think the low this year was a freak move, as you can see there. So we'll take the 3. So the correction there from number 2 to number 3 to the low in December of 2015 was 72.7%. So a much bigger correction than in 1976 or from 74 to 76. But that's normal because it's a bigger wave. So how did I come about with the 2025 period? Well, that's because in the 70s, it took about 3 to 4 years for the first move from 1 to 2, and then we had a correction of 2 years, and then a move that took 4 years. So it looks like the second leg in terms of duration is similar to the first. And as the first leg in this current bull market, secular bull market in silver, took about 10 years, I would say it's going to take another 10 years for the second leg. And the second leg, of course, bottomed in 2015. So we get a target time period of 2025. Of course, markets like nature are not exact. And this is just like me trying to speculate into the future. So it's not a perfect science. It could happen before or even a little after that period. So you now must be asking and curious to know what the price is. Well, my upside target is around $423 per ounce. And how do I get that? If you look at the 1970s bull market in terms of percentage, the leg from 3 to 4 was 2.76 times bigger than the leg from 1 to 2. So if we do that, extrapolate that to the current bull market, 1 to 2, right? If we do 2.76 times that, we get to 3,118%, and that would equate to a price of $423. That's from the low in December of 2015. But let's be more conservative, and we say that the leg from 3 to 4 is going to be like the leg from 1 to 2, which I don't think will be, because these waves get bigger and bigger, and I think this wave from 3 to 4 is going to be bigger, just like it was in the 1970s bull market. If I only take a move of 1,130%, we get silver around $150 by 2025. But I think 420 is much more likely. Yes, there are people talking about silver going to 600 next month. I don't think that's realistic, but you never know. I think this is more likely that will take a little longer for silver to really move to where it should be. And yes, it feels like they have manipulated it, but when you look at the bigger picture, it all makes sense, in my opinion. And yeah, the manipulation, of course, has been able to keep things as they are. The system, it's allowed the central bankers, the governments, to inflate even more. So it's given us even more time to prepare for this. Of course, we need to be patient. So there you go. $423 silver or thereabouts. It could be a little less or a little more. As I said, it's not perfect. So with that, let's quickly look at where the markets are this morning. So it's 9:07 a.m. London time. We've got spot gold at $18.94. It's up about $5. The high has been $18.99. Silver is up just over 1%, or up 28 cents at $24.94. The range in silver has been $25.09 to $24.60. So to the stock markets, they're continuing to go higher. I think people still expect the Fed to keep accommodating, so they'll keep buying for now. The Dow is up 0.8% at 29,724, or 245 points. S&P is up 0.75% at 3612. The NASDAQ 100 future is up 0.5% at 12,000. What about the currencies? We got sterling unchanged at 132, basically 132.00. The euro is up almost 0.2% versus the dollar at 118.50. The dollar is down 0.2% versus the yen at 104.40. And the dollar is down 1/3% versus the Chinese yuan at 657. WTI crude is up almost 2% at 41.06. And the 10-year yield is actually surprisingly lower this morning. It's at 0.88, down 1.5 basis points. So there you go. If you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. Make sure you shared this video far and wide as well. And you can also follow me on Twitter, Parler, Facebook, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great start to the week. Take care. Bye.